and welcome to the third session of our series. As I always do in series, I start the session by asking if there is any lingering business, like a question that rose in the week since we last met, an insight that you had that you would like to share, or something that you want to make sure that I will address in this session. This is a good time to let me know. Other than that, we are going to the third poet of those early Hebrew poets of the 20th century, and this time a woman, and the poet Rachel. I will talk about her in a minute, but I'd like to make a comment as per participation in this session. I have noticed in the two earlier sessions that there were less active participation that I'm used to in my regular classes, and that's fine. But therefore, I have prepared more stuff today so that we can do some more learning, even if there is less active participation from the group. Nevertheless, if there is participation, stop me, and I always welcome your voices, opinions, and comments. The other thing is, unlike what we have seen with Chernichovsky and Bialik, Rachel's poetry, much more of it was set to music, and much more of it is popular to this very day, and had been popular for many years. So I am planning to include 3 songs by beautiful renditions, and it may happen that these are songs familiar to you from Jewish summer camp, from youth movement, from whatever. If that happens to be the case, let me know, share your memories. They'll be very, very welcome. And with that, and without further ado, let me take you to our PowerPoint that I had prepared for today. So here we are with our third session of the poet Rachel. And you can see that I have not neglected, but intentionally not included her last name. Rachel, like most people that we know, had a last name. It was Bluvstein. But in her lifetime, and for sure after that, she became so famous that people stopped mentioning the last name. And you can see even on her gravesite, on the right-hand side of our slide, that her grave, her matzeva, the siman also includes only her first name and not the last name. So this is a sort of a custom, a minhag, but I can, of course, as I did, tell you her last name, Rachel Bluvstein. Of course, we will be amiss if we did not mention, first of all, my plan for today. These are the poems that I am planning to share with you today, some of them with their music, and I have added one, and let's see how we will do with or without it. This is the third candle of Hanukkah, so Chag Sameach to all of you. I hope you are enjoying safe family and community events to mark the holiday. And now we are continuing. I wanted to start with sharing the slide, which is all in Hebrew, and yet you can get some of the meaning. There is nothing much for you to read there, but the fact that you have Rachel, 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 and all I wanted you to get and to catch from this slide is the abundance of additions, old and new, that we keep publishing of Rachel's poetry, the fact that she is on the 20 shekel banknote, with a quote from one of the poems that we will study today. So just to tell you that she is really, her poetry rather, I should say, is still very well known, especially those poems that have been set to music. This is also a good moment for me to remind people who haven't heard me say this a zillion times that the Hebrew language does not distinguish between the word poem and the word song. They are both shir or shirim in the plural. And when we talk about poetry, we say shirah. So oftentimes Hebrew speakers will mix that and they will say song when they mean poem. But in the case of Rachel, we don't need to be that pedantic because so many of her poems became popular songs that the confusion is somehow appropriate in this case. And we continue and go directly to the timeline to understand a little bit Rachel's life. So she's born in 1890 in a town in eastern Ukraine called Sartov. And I'd like to start by saying immediately, and I'll come back to that in a moment, that when we speak of people, of Jewish people, coming from the Pale of Settlement, coming from Tsarist Russia, the Ukraine, Poland, etc., we all have shtetl images in front of our eyes, and Fiddler on the Roof, and poverty, and persecution, and such. Rachel comes from a very well-to-do family, so much so that when I take you to the next phase, which will deal with her and her sister's Aliyah in 1909, when the ladies are, and when Rachel is 19, I want it to be very clear that none of them arrives to the port of Jaffa about, I don't know, like half a mile from my home here, with the intention to make Aliyah. The two young women were sent to Italy to study art and music. This was part of the education this family could afford. The boat, however, has a stop in Jaffa, and they decide to look around and see what's what. You know, these are the years of what we call the second Aliyah, the second wave of Zionist immigration, with the emerging first kibbutzim and all the pioneering, and they fall in love and stay. But this is not a family, this is not Bialik who turns Zionist and such. None of them had cheder or yeshiva education, of course not, they were women. They don't have Hebrew that the guys Cherichovsky and Bialik had because of their yeshiva and cheder education. It's a totally different background. They could play the piano, they spoke French, which Bialik for sure didn't. So we are looking at the same period of time, but very different. In the year 1911, we will find Rachel in the first agricultural settlement for women in Moshava Kinneret, created and founded by the famous woman pioneer activist Hannah Meisels, who later started an agricultural school in Halal, which was celebrating its 100th cohort, of which one of my granddaughters was a graduate this year. So we are even connected. This is like a solid tradition of education nowadays together to men and women. So she is in Kinneret in 1911. And she will continue to join the first kibbutz, Dgania. Here she is in Moshava Kinneret, learning with the other ladies. There is, by the way, a beautiful novel about it, Chavat Ha'alamot, the Maiden's Farm, about the story of Hannah Meisels, the farm for the women and such. She will continue, and in the year, she will join Kibbutz Dgania as a member. And in the year 1913, nowadays, we can say before World War I, but when you are before, you don't know that you are before. So the kibbutz decides that they need somebody to be trained professionally in high-level agriculture, and they sent her to Toulouse in France to study that. And this is where she will be sort of trapped for World War I, unable to come back, and she will travel to Russia, home, and spend the years of the war there. This is where, unfortunately, taking care, she's in Russia throughout the years of World War I, and she will come again on the very famous boat Ruslan. I am going to stop for a moment about the Ruslan in a while and show you a picture that is interesting. It is important to know, however, that while she was in Russia, she worked with orphans, Jewish orphans who were orphaned by World War One, and very probably it's there taking care of them in the bad conditions of World War One that she actually had tuberculosis, caught it probably from the children, or maybe some other way. So when she comes back to Eretz Israel on the second time that she makes Aliyah, the first time she comes at the time of what we call the second Aliyah, the Ruslan is the boat that starts the third Aliyah. She will try to join her buddies in Kibbutz Dgania, but she is coughing and spilling blood. By now, the kibbutz has young babies and toddlers. So there is a meeting of the kibbutz that we always quote with that horrible sentence, "Anachnu bri'im, at chola," you need to leave. We are well, you are sick, you have to leave. And in the year 1920, this woman who really will end up being the poetic voice of this period in the history of Free State Israel needs to leave her beloved kibbutz. She will live for the next 11 years when she is getting more poorly and more poorly. Tuberculosis was incurable at the time. This is pre-antibiotic times. A part of the time in Jerusalem, part of the time in Tel Aviv, and she will die in the year 1931, barely 40 years of age, not really. So this is the short history. I have put on the top, on the left-hand side, a few historical events, so you can see what corresponds: the Dreyfus trial, the Kishinev pogrom, the death of Herzl, the second Aliyah. These are all events of the early phases of her life that will bring her to the land of Israel. I'm now going to show you documents from an exhibition that we had a short while ago. I'm going to say probably just before COVID, at the Israel Museum. There was a particular exhibit about the Ruslan, the cultural pioneers aboard the Ruslan, because in Zionist lore, the Ruslan is more or less the Mayflower. Many more people will claim that their parents and ancestors came on the Ruslan than the boat could ever had, probably, just like with the Mayflower. But we have from the list of passengers, it is very clearly marked that one young lady, Bluvstein Rachel, is on the boat. So Rachel is on this boat that will bring to Israel artists and musicians and people who will be in leadership later on. This is not the story and the lecture about the Ruslan. I can do that some other time. And the famous people who were on it, the parents of Chaim Guri, later a laureate, very important poet, were on it. But I'll show you one item that you may find interesting, and we will check if indeed you know why I think this interesting. So I'm marked in a red circle the name Rosa Cohen, who is traveling alone. She is one, she is not a family, as she is 25 years of age. And I'm going to check and see, does anybody know who Rosa Cohen was? And why do I mark it to show you? Anybody has an idea who was that young woman who is traveling as a pioneer on her own to Eretz Israel on the first boat of the third Aliyah? Nobody knows. Okay, so note it now. Rosa Cohen was the mother-to-be of Yitzhak Rabin. And so he indeed is connected to that famous boat. She was unmarried yet at the time and very, very socialist. So a book that had now appeared about her biography that I saw at the Rabin Museum a couple of weeks ago has the title Rosa Ha'aduma, Rosa the Red. Okay, so she was on that boat. Maybe they had some conversations with Rachel. I would know about that, and I don't think that anybody does. Maybe from the diaries of Rachel. So now let us start addressing ourselves to some of her poetry. So we are going to look at one of the most famous poems, and I will take time to show you certain elements in it that allow me to discuss male and female poetry in Israel at the time, that allow me to discuss a certain mood of Rachel. I will even take the liberty to say a word about the translator, Robert Friend, who is very worthwhile mentioning even here. So, and then we, of course, listen to one of the beautiful renditions of this poem set to music. So I'm reading the Hebrew for you, not in too much of a detail, because we will listen to the Hebrew again with the song, and we will be working with the English. אל ארצי, to my land. לא שרתי לך ארצי ולא פארתי שמך, בעלילות גבורה בשלל קרבות. רק עץ ידיי נטעו חופי ירדן שוקטים, רק שביל כבשו רגליי על פני שדות. אכן דלה מאוד ידעתי זאת האם, אכן דלה מאוד מנחת ביתך, רק כל תרועת הגיל ביום ייגע האור, רק בכי במסתרים עלי אונייך. To my land. I have not sung you, my country, nor brought glory to your name, with the great deeds of a hero or the spoils of battle yields. But on the shores of the Jordan, my hands have planted a tree, and my feet have made a pathway through your fields. Modest are the gifts I bring you, I know this, mother. Modest I know the offerings of your daughter. Only an outburst of song on a day when the light flares up. Only a silent tear. Let me show you by pulling some contraption that I have prepared on the PowerPoint presentation to make my point. Look at this. Lo, 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 dala, dala, rak, not, but, modest, only. A very sort of, I'm sorry I exist kind of voice. I haven't done this and I haven't done that, and I barely planted a tree and barely pressed with my feet a pathway to the water, and my gift is modest and modest again, and this is only what I can give you and only what I can give you. At the time Rachel is writing this, we have hardly any female voices in Hebrew poetry. There is one more at her time. There was one born in Israel, Esther Rab, and the next one would be Leah Goldberg, and that will be like 20 years later. Okay? The male poetry of the pioneering group at the time, that's not your Bialik and Chernichovsky who published books in Odessa and Germany. These are the guys who come and till the soil and write their poetry, is all collective, plural. I'm going to do an imitation like Nivne Artzenu, let's build our country, and we will climb the mountain and we will destroy the enemy and we'll ride the swamps, and everything is plural, everything is promises for the future, everything is big, huge, large groups. So the first thing to notice that the important female voice of the period that we have is not afraid to be individual. Speak in the first person. I, singular, sharti, not sharnu. Okay? Which is very unique and very important at the time, and may be considered by the guys as chutzpah. For her to put the light or the attention on her personality. The other thing is indeed talking about a very intimate connectedness to the land. This is not the tractors roaring uphill or in the fields. Barefoot to the Kinneret, one tree I've planted with my own hands, A conversation with the land as mother. This is a tradition that comes from Russian poetry. In Russian poetry, the land, the country, I'll come to you in a moment, David, okay? A, the connectedness to the land is very rooted in Russian poetry at the time. But if you look at this very modest voice, I think that as American readership or listeners at the time, you may find a connectedness to a very seemingly modest female voice in American poetry at the time, which is actually a very strong voice, and that's Emily Dickinson. Now, Rachel did not have a first-hand knowledge of Emily Dickinson, but a poet, a Russian poet with whom she was connected, Anna Akhmatova, had translated into Russian Emily Dickinson. So she might have had some touch, some knowledge of this very clear a female voice that is not shying away from speaking about intimate, personal, individual, small experience, a walk, a shadow, a shade, a plant, a tree. So one could say that this is a very much Emily Dickinson-like voice in Israeli poetry. David Levine, bevakasha. Please unmute yourself.
Boker Tov. When I may be jumping ahead. You may you may already have the answer as part of your presentation. My first reaction reading this is there's an English idiom, a humble brag, where you, if you're familiar with it. So I'm reading, it's like when Noel Coward was asked, what do you think of your career? He said, well, I have a talent to amuse. I mean, it's really understated. So I guess my question is, at the time she wrote this, had she already experienced some success, or was this really an Emily Dickinson character?
And I will show you at the end of my session how indeed the guys, including Bialik, treated that. This humble, beautiful, nice poetry, sort of patting her on the head, a well done kind of thing. Not yet the major place that she will occupy later. And thank you very much for bringing this up. Ed, bevakasha, please unmute.
Just sort of following on that, two different points. It's artsy, so it's very personal. Just from the title, and that would seem to be very much contrary to, isn't it our land? I mean, it's our land, it's our thing.
And our forefathers, and
yeah, I mean,
none of that.
Very personal. Which is what you said. But the second thing is that it's free verse. She isn't trying to rhyme, and maybe in part because her Hebrew is not good enough to do the complexity of it. I don't know whether she does a lot.
You should know because you participated in my intensive Rachel classes, but I will repeat it. Rachel comes to the land of Israel with no Hebrew whatsoever.
Right.
And she insists on learning Hebrew in a very particular way. She wants to learn from children. She starts working as an aide, as an help in kindergartens in the Moshavot, the colonies of the first Aliyah, and she wants to acquire knowledge of the language as children learn it. She doesn't have all the Gemara quotes that Bialik will have, and she will learn and discover biblical stories as she goes. She adopts close to her heart the figure of Rachel, our matriarch Rachel, but we will see later in her poetry some biblical references, but not at the beginning. This is indeed a very basic Hebrew learned from the roots with children. And remember, children do not yet have children's poetry in Israel. It's all nascent, it's all beginning. So yes, we are touching the roots here. Sherry, bevakasha, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to make a comment, and it's interesting that you were just talking about that she was learning Hebrew from children, because my comment was reading to my land. It feels very maternal to me, as if planting that one tree or raising one child. Like it really hones in on the importance.
and even note the bare feet that are pressing the pathway. It's practically intimate, sensual, I would say, on the verge of erotic connectedness to the land. And
Yes.
we don't see that in the guy's poetry.
Yes.
You see, it's very female. And now let me take you back to the PowerPoint for a minute before we are listening to one of their renditions. So here we go. And of course, a word about Robert Friend, because those of you who have been with me for a long time, you know how lacking we are of good translations of Israeli poetry and how much work goes into translating with our friends Michael Bonin, Heather Silverman. Ed had tried his hand here and there helping us. So one needs to note the exception. And Robert Friend is an exception. An American, a very socialist, I would say even communist. You can read up about him. I'm not going to do all his history. And he decides to make Aliyah very, very early and becomes a teacher at the Hebrew University. He was a gay man. We don't know very much about his partners at the time. In those early years, it was kept very secretly. But he translated early Rachel and early Leah Goldberg, but his claim to fame is that he is the only one who had translated Natan Alterman's lyrical poetry, just samples out of it, which is very rare and very much appreciated because we do not have much of that either. We will, of course, in the coming future with a new anthology that I will mention to you at the end of my class. So just a word for Robert Friend. Take a minute to look him up on Wikipedia. A very interesting personality, a poet in his own right, that we have addressed, as you may remember, when we looked at LGBT poetry coming from Israel at the time. So I'm going to leave you with these highlights of the modesty, the only, the poor, the modest, the no, as we are going to enjoy one at least of the many renditions of this one. Bevakasha. Ed, can you hear and see?
ארצי ולא פארתי שמך בעלילות גבורה בשלל קרבות רק אצנעו ידיי חופי ירדן שוקטים רק שביל כבשו רגלי על פני שדות רק אצנעו ידיי חופי ירדן שוקטים רק שביל כבשו רגלי על פני שדות אכן דלה מאוד, ידעתי זאת האם. אכן דלה מאוד, מנחת ביתך. רק כל תרועת הגיל ביום ייגע האור. עלי אויב רק כל תרועת הגיל ביום ייגע האור רק בכי במסתרים.
Okay, I think this will do for now. I hope you enjoyed that. If anybody recognized it, if anybody has memories of having learned this song earlier in their life and would like to share a memory, you're always welcome to raise your hand and let me know about it. I'd like to say one more additional piece of information, that normally when poets write their poems and somebody decides to set them to music, it happens much later. And in the case of Rachel, you could see, Ramon, I see your hand, just a minute. In the case of Rachel, she was very sickly when she started writing. All her poetry is in that last decade when she's practically dying. So Yehuda Sharet set this poem to music in her lifetime. And that's the only one of her poems that she had heard the music for. We can sing, Shamare Golan and all that, the Hatishma Koli. She never heard those. This is the only one that was set to music in her lifetime, and I hope she got to enjoy it. Ramon, bevakasha, your hand was raised.
Yes, I just was curious to know if this was Chava Alberstein singing.
I will check. I don't think so. I don't think it was. It sounded like, but I don't think it was Chava Alberstein. But just go. By the way, I looked up Minhag Chadash Balamdina for you, and and actually I addressed it in my book club on Sunday. It has nothing to do with the creation of the State of Israel. It's something very, very different. And if there is time at the end of class, I will tell you. Otherwise, email me and I will tell you. A very interesting development. Anybody else about this song? I don't see any raised hand. So we are going to go back to the PowerPoint and continue with yet another poem. So we have seen this one. This is the one I normally like to start with. I am asking you to try as you can during this session, remember this poem. I'll come to you in a short while, Michael, okay? I want you to remember it for the fact that I brought it as a first one, that I brought it as one of the purest samples of love of the land, of the commitment of this woman pioneer, because, and also mark the title, El Artzi, to my land, because in about 20 minutes I will show you a poem that is called Ho Artzi, O my land, that was written in a difference of maybe 11 months from this one, and we will try and see the change of mood between the two. Michael, go ahead, Perlmutter. Please unmute. No.
No, I just wonder how you interpret the last line of translation, for your poverty.
The land is miserable.
Oh,
This is 1926. There are no trees. There is no shade. We will see it in the next poem. They can barely make a living in the kibbutzim. The country is really, really miserable. These are the early years of the British Mandate, and life was very hard in the land of Israel at the time. It's a very simple, practical note of reality. Okay?
Thank you.
And we are continuing to the next one. So when one would look at the Golan Heights from where the women's farm was in Kinneret, or from Kibbutz Dgania, one of Rachel's poems addresses that. The ability to sit on the shore of the Kinneret and look at the Golan across. The point, however, is that before I start reading the Hebrew to you, then the English, then the music, I want you to know the year 1927. Rachel is long now very sick in Tel Aviv. She is not writing the poem as she would have us believe while she is sitting on shores of the Kinneret and watching it and enjoying it and looking at the Golan. No way. This is all nostalgia. This is all memories. And this is how we need at least take the poem in. It's very easy to be with school kids nowadays, by the Kinneret and teach them the song, and they can experience it as if they are talking with Rachel who can see it. But that was not her experience. Sham hare Golan, hoshet hayad vegabam, bidmama botachat metzavim atzor. בבדידות קורנת נם חרמון הסבא וצינה נושבת מפסגת הצחור. שם על חוף הים יש דקל שפל צמרת, סתור שיער הדקל כתינוק שובב, שגלש למטה ובמי כנרת משכשך רגליו. מה ירבו פרחים בחורף על הקרח, דם מקלנית וכתם הקרקום. יש ימים פי 7 אז ירוק הירק, פי 70 תכולה התכלת במרום. גם כי אברש ואהלך שכוח, והיה הלב למסעות זרים, האוכל לבגוד בך, האוכל לשכוח, חסד נעורים. No matter what history and biography books will tell you about how Rachel did not have Hebrew to start with, her Hebrew at this phase, towards the end of her life, is wonderful. Beautiful metaphors, beautiful imagery, rich language of synonyms that are less in use to words that she could have put much simpler ones. Let's go to the English. Over there are the hills of Golan. Over there are the hills of Golan. Stretch out your hand and touch them. Halevai. She imagines it. In the stalwart stillness, they give the command to halt. In splendid isolation, Grandfather Herman slumbers. A cool wind blows from the peak of whiteness. Over there on the seashore, a low-topped palm tree stands, disheveled like a mischievous infant that had slid down and splashes in the waters of Kinneret. This is in very close connection to her last memories from the kibbutz. She actually was trying to work with the children, and she had in Russia, they wouldn't let her of her disease, but these are probably her last memories of walking with the toddlers to the Kinneret. How abundant are the flowers in the winter, bunches of blood-red anemones, the orange of the crocus. There are days when the greenery is sevenfold, green and sevenfold is the blue of the sky. But even if I become poverty-stricken, and walk bent over, and my heart becomes the beacon for strangers, how can I betray you? How can I forget? How can I forget the grace of youth? Now this is heartbreaking, because she did not betray, she was betrayed by her comrades, by her friends in the kibbutz, and I know all the medical reasons, or one could say excuses, and still she was very harshly treated. The groups, the behavior, the communities of these pioneers were often not very kind to members who were alien, to members who were suffering different difficulties. By the way, the palm tree on the shore of the Kinneret with the low leaves and branches is actually a reference to one such palm on the branch of the on the beach, on the shore of the Kinneret, by which people in trouble have committed suicide among the pioneers. So these are, days that can seem to us from a distance of time very romantic. On some levels, they have been very, very cruel. Yes, David, go ahead, please. Please unmute. David?
Unmute. I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, did the kibbutz that had kicked her out ever apologize or ever acknowledge or try to reclaim her?
Excuses mainly. It wasn't like that. It's false news. It was different, etc. But it's a thing that appears in literature ever since. Maybe somebody did apologize. There wasn't much to apologize to, you know. She was barren. She never had children. Her sister, I don't survived her by a little. But no, I do not know of any serious apology. Ramon, bevakasha, unmute.
Two things very short. The first one is, I presume that there is a misspelling for Harei Golan, and she did mean Harei and not Har.
Yeah, it's a misspell here.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And the second thing, which I think, at least for me, when you says, how can I betray you, and uses this verb that has resonances, I think, for us as boged. In the today, you know, as Yitzhak Rabin was called.
Yeah,
I
please don't take
wonder.
it.
I
No,
know.
no. I would not like to take it there, please.
Okay. But I just wanted to say that it's incredible what poetry can do for you when she talks about betraying the
True.
land, right? That's all I wanted to say. That's all.
Okay, we'll go to Sherry and then to Peggy. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Quick question. The line "Grandfather Herman slumbers," does that have any specific meaning beyond, you know, my general assumption of, you know, an older man slumbering? Does the name or the reference have any specific...
Americans who don't get it. The only mountain
No,
in
it's
Israel
sorry.
that is covered by white snow is Hermon. So it is the
Thank
only
you.
grandfather. We don't have any others.
I'm
Miri,
glad I asked thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Miri, bevakasha, go ahead.
So you've pointed out that she didn't have the background of Jewish study that the men had, but when I read "How Can I Forget," all I'm thinking is you know, how if I forget thee, O Jerusalem.
Of course. And I told you,
It's
by the end of her life, she will have a very good command in Hebrew and a solid knowledge of biblical literature. I don't think that she had any of the later layers, the Mishnah and the Talmud in
okay.
general, etc. But Torah, she had for sure, and I will show you that in a poem. Let me share with you a beautiful rendition of Sham Harei Golan. This one, Ramon, is by Chava Alberstein. Just give it a minute until it uploads. And then we'll have to do it, unfortunately, a second time. Otherwise, it doesn't work, but now it will.
שם הרי גולן, הושט היד וגבה, בדממה בוטחת מצבים, עצור. בבדידות קורנת, נם חרמון הסבא, וצינה נושבת מפסגת הצחור. שם על חוף הים יש דקל שפל צמרת, סתור שיער הדקל כתינוק שובב, שגלש למטה ובמי כנרת משכשך רגליו. מה ירבו פרחים בחורף על הקרח, דם הכלנית וכתם הקרקום. יש ימים פי 7, אז ירוק הירק, פי 70 תכולה התכלת במרום. גם כי יברש והלך שכוח, והיה למשואות זרים, איך אוכל לבגוד בך איך אוכל לשכוח, איך אוכל לשכוח חסד נעורי.
Okay, you can all find these recordings easily on YouTube if you would like to listen to all of them, and we shall go back to our PowerPoint to continue exploring more of Rachel's beautiful and meaningful poetry to study. So here we go, and this time I am taking you to another famous one. Best translated, you can see here again, we found a good translator. And this poem, written in 1927, is very clearly echoing the fact that she cannot believe that that really happened. So here is one of the poems in which there is no pretense to still be there by the Kinneret, to still experience this sense of I can almost touch it, but rather an admission of the longing, ואולי. ואולי לא היו דברים מעולם, ואולי לא השקמתי עם שחר לגן לעובדו בזיעת אפי. מעולם בימים ארוכים ויוקדים של קציר, במרומי עגלה עמוסת אלומות לא נתתי קולי בשיר. מעולם לא טהרתי בתכלת שוקתה ובתום של כנרת שלי, הו כנרת שלי, היית או חלמתי חלום. And no matter how many times I will read these lines, I will choke over them, because they are really heartbreaking. Let's go to the translation, perhaps. Perhaps it was never so. Perhaps I never woke early and went to the fields to labor in the sweat of my brow. Nor in the long blazing days of harvest on top of the wagon laden with sheaves made my voice ring with song, nor bathed myself clean in the calm blue water of my Kinneret. Oh, my Kinneret, were you there, or did I only dream? And I'd like you to see how the longing and the dreaming of that beautiful past has nothing lush or rich or extravaganza. All she remembers is the daily hard work, the sitting at the end of a scorching hot day on the sheaves on the way back to the kibbutz, on being able to bathe in the Kinneret, and all that in her present situation in 27, when this is written, is only a distant dream. It's hard to say, but I would say that between the first song that I let you hear, To My Land, El Arzi, and this one, they are probably competing for the most famous Rachel songs set to music and sung to this day. You can hear them on Israeli radio, so bear with me for a moment. This time it will be Esther Ofarim, and just bear with me until it uploads. And Ramon, who knows the musician, seems happy. Just a moment. And here goes.
ואולי לא היו הדברים מעולם, ואולי מעולם לא השכמתי עם שחר לגן לעובדו זיעת אפיים. בימים ארוכים ויוקדים של קציר, בחרתי בתכלת שוקתיו ובתום של כנרת שלי, של כנרת שלי, היית או חלמתי חלום של כנרת שלי, של כנרת שלי, היית או חלמתי חלום.
Okay, and I'm checking with you again if anybody has any personal memory. Yes, Beverly, you do. Go ahead. I was hoping for somebody to connect to one of the songs. Please
Okay,
unmute.
well, I've connected to both of them because they're part of my past. That record by Esther Ofarim, I think I've memorized it. It lives in my mind forever. And what I find interesting is I learned these songs when I was young in a Zionist camp, and I taught them. I was a song and dance instructress. I had no idea what they meant.
Oi.
Can you believe that?
Well, I hear it so many times that I have to believe it, and then why would I not believe you? But yeah.
So I am so grateful to you. I'm so enjoying this class because as an old person, I'm finding meanings that I didn't know. I mean, it's a gorgeous song. Ve'ulai is like one of my favorite songs. So, I mean, the music speaks for itself. We don't even need words. The music is gorgeous. I would like to know who are the composers of those two songs.
I have to look them up. I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you drop me an email at korazim@gmail.com, I look them up for you easy. Okay?
Okay. And why don't we have songs today that are this beautiful?
We have some beautiful songs of later
Not like these.
and not get me started off the songs of today because I don't like to get angry. Michael, you go next.
No, I remember in my 20s when I visited Israel and first worked in a kibbutz, and when she's recalling the difficulty, the struggle, but at the end of the day, it's such a good feeling. I mean, it really touches that personal experience. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for bringing it back.
Yeah. Miss Fishman, are you or are you not Lyle? I don't think you're Lyle, to the best of my knowledge.
That's my husband's name.
Yeah, I thought so. So what's your name?
Sorry, my name is Debbie Rosenman, and I grew up with my father singing Vi'ulai all the time.
That's wonderful. I was so hoping to be able for some of you to connect to some of these songs. So I'm happy that it is happening. And let us continue and do some more. There will be not much more music today, but different angles to her poetry. So let me lead you on with this. By the way, this is a good moment for me to share something that I may have said in earlier classes and I don't want to forget. If any of you can use the material I'm using, including my PowerPoint, in your work and teaching, let me know and I will send you a copy of it. I do not hold educational materials that I develop as my own, and I'm always willing to share. If you are teaching, if you are in Chavrutot, in whatever, korazim@gmail.com, and I will send you a copy. Okay, not a problem. And now we are going back to the PowerPoint and continue to the next poem/song. So this one is a poem that holds some personal connection to me. We will study it first and then I'll tell you the story. Some of you, of course, who have been with me for a while know it by now. Akara, barren. Ben לו היה לי ילד קטן, שחור טלטלים ונבון, לאחוז בידו ולפסוע לאט בשבילי הגן, ילד קטן. אורי אקרא לו, אורי שלי, רך וצלול הוא השם הקצר, רסיס נהרה לילדי השחרחר, אורי אקרא. עוד אתמרמר כרחל האם, עוד אתפלל כחנה בשילה, עוד אחכה לו. 1928, we are moving ahead in her very short lifetime. Barren, a son, if I only had a little boy, dark sable-curled and so smart, to grasp by the hand, to stroll and enjoy all the garden path. One little boy, Ori, I'd call him, Ori, my light, a name so succinct, both lucid and soft, a dewdrop, a gleam for my raven-haired boy. Ori, I'd call him, Ori, I'd call. But I still weep like Rachel, and I still plead like Hannah at Shiloh. I'll wait him, I will wait him, a son, if I only had one little boy, dark, sable-curled, and so smart, to grasp by the hand, to stroll and enjoy all the garden path. One little boy, I'll wait him. I really don't think you need an elaborate Rashi midrash on that. These are the heartbroken spoken words of a woman who never married, who did not have a life partner to have a child with when she maybe could have had. And by the time this poem is written, it's very obvious that she will never have one. She is doing so poorly. And she can imagine the child and the way he looks and his name, etc. And she makes reference to two biblical figures. Did I not promise you that by the end of her life she will have a good grasp of the biblical lore? One is Rachel, who had to wait so long until she would have a son and then lose her life with the birth of the second one. Hannah in Shiloh, the book of Samuel, again a barren woman whose husband, thank God, is still kind and nice to her in spite of the fact that she cannot have children, and she is praying and pleading for one. So Rachel, our poet, is quoting these two biblical figures. This poem too was set to music. We are not going to listen to it because I want to tell you the story. And the story is a personal story connected to my mom of blessed memory. So my mom, Eva, married immediately after the Holocaust, and they came on the clandestine immigrant boats. You can see her in May of 1946 leaning out of the boat in Haifa. And if you look very, very carefully with discerning eyes, you will be able to see that I am in the picture as well, because my mom is pregnant with me. I was born in October, so this is the 4th month of the pregnancy. Because my mother had been pregnant, they were supposed to go with the rest of their kvutza, of their group, to a kibbutz where there were other Hungarian-speaking people like my mom. But that particular kibbutz does not have an open spot in their baby's home. So my parents could not go there, and they were sent to another kibbutz, a larger kibbutz that had a Beit Tinokot, a baby's home. And in that kibbutz, there was nobody who could speak Hungarian. My mom always had loved poetry, and I can also tell you that although she was at the beginning of her marriage, she knew by then that her marriage was not working that great. It is part of the story. So after a few days in the kibbutz, she's working in the dining room, in the kitchen. She finds another young woman, also a Holocaust survivor from Hungary, she befriends. And after work, she asks her, tell me, do these people here, do they have poetry like we used to have in Hungary? So the woman tells her, of course they do. So she says to her, so tomorrow after work, we are going to meet. You'll bring me one short poem and translate it for me. I really need to be able to know something about local poetry. So Chaya of blessed memory, my mom's friend, brought her this poem. I think the intention was to tell my mother, you know, you may have it hard and you just arrived and the work and the heat, but you're pregnant, you're going to have a baby, and this woman, she did not even have that, so rejoice. My mom, according to the stories I was raised on, fell in love with the poem, fell in love with the poet, and lo and behold, decides to call me Rachel. I am actually named after the poet that we are studying. And when the time came and I got married and had a boy, I called him my son, now 50 some years of age. His name is Ori.
Yuri.
Not Yuri, Ori, my
Uri.
light, Ori, not the Russian Yuri. And when my
Okay, thank you.
when my daughter is born, there is a mention in the poem of a dewdrop, Resis Nehara. So my daughter becomes Tali. And we live happily ever after all my life with the knowledge that all three of us come from the poem. And it's a beautiful story, is it not? When people ask me, when did you start getting interested in poetry? I said, what do you mean? I come from a poem. Are you ready for a story that will spoil the beauty of this one? The end of the story? So my parents got divorced when I was 2 years of age, and it wasn't a nice divorce. And my father had left the country. He went to live in Argentina, started a new family, etc. My mom never, ever stopped being angry at him. And occasionally she remarried, and she had another daughter, my sister Ilana, by that second marriage, and she had a good life. But occasionally she would burst out, especially when I have done something that she didn't like. And she would go like, and your father, and he was that, and he was never that, and so on. And you know, as you grow up and mature and your parents age, you learn to accept this. And when it happens, you say, okay, mom, we have talked about that in the past, etc. So the last time this happens is about 6 months before mom had passed. So she died when she was 86. That was almost 16 years ago. I was well over 60. Okay. And she starts again, and your father, and he did that, and he didn't do that, and so on and so forth. And then she adds, and I even agreed to name you after his mother. And I go like, what? Am I not named after the poet and the poet? Oh, that too. So only was I'm 64 years of age do I learn the true story of why I'm called Rachel, and the poet too, which led me, by the way, to research the history of my paternal grandmother and write a whole book about it, but that's a different story. So she was called Roja Rochel, and she perished in the Holocaust, and I'm named after her, and I carry both connections very proudly. And let us go back to our PowerPoint to continue a little bit more with Rachel. So that's the story on that one. Yeah, Ramon, bevakasha, as we go to the next one.
Yeah, two things. As an Argentinian Jew, I just want to say, no, two things. First of all, I always sing Akara on the first day of Rosh Hashanah before the Haftarah that Hana is everybody that knows.
Okay, so my father lived and is buried in Mendoza.
Ah, okay.
And I went to see him once when in the year 1995. So I met him once as an adult, but that's a different story. Let us continue to the next one, and this is something peculiar. And even people who are lovers and knowledgeable about Rachel's poetry rarely know this particular connection. So the year is July 23rd, 1946. Rachel had been dead for 15 years. It's not something from her lifetime. The more extreme anti-British underground, not the Haganah, but the Etzel or Irgun, as you call them in English. This is the time after World War II is over. They want the Brits out, and they prepare a major terrorist attack on King David Hotel, where the main offices of the British Army or police or whatever are in Jerusalem. And lots of people get killed in the attack, many of them civilians. The Haganah is opposing it. There is a lot of critique in the country of that particular deed. So here is the newspaper of that day, Herev Grag Vatkafa, lot of killing, and I am really cutting short the translation for you. A horrible attack and a lot of criticism. And on the first page of the paper, I just enlarged it, they publish a poem by Rachel. And that is an interesting fact because indeed part of the politically critical poetry, and we have a solid tradition of that in Israel, one of the earliest is Rachel. So I want to show you this short poem, which is very difficult to understand, but it is that exactly. It is called A Day of Tiding. I'm reading the Hebrew, and without further ado, going straight to the English. יום בשורה, בשכבר הימים האויב הנורא את שומרון הביא במצור. 4 מצורעים לבישרו בשורה, לבישרו בשורת הדרור. כשומרון במצור כל הארץ כולה, וכבד הרעב מנשוא, אך אני לא אובה בשורת גאולה, אם מפי מצורע היא תבוא. הטהור יבשר, וגאל הטהור, ואם ידו לא תמצא לגאול, אז נבחר לי ליפול ממצוקת המצור, אור ליום בשורה הגדול. A day of tiding. Now there were 4 men stricken with tsarat, leprosy, at the entrance of the gate. This day is a day of good news. This is from the second book of Kings, chapter 7, verses 3 to 9. They tell the story of a siege over the city of Samaria, and then the enemy disappears, and the first to notice that are the people outside of the city because of their sickness, because of the tzara, they cannot be in the city, and they come and tell the city dwellers that the enemy had gone. This is the short of it. And the idea is that the good tidings are received by people who are tainted, who are not pure, the biblical notion of tzarat that also has moral connotation. Rachel is reacting to a military event before 46, of course, because she died in 31, also committed by the Irgun that was criticized. She is not mentioning it, and she is saying, for a long while, the dreadful enemy laid siege to Samaria. 4 lepers brought tidings of freedom. Like Samaria under siege, the entire land, the famine is too hard to bear, so there is suffering in the land. It's like Samaria, it's under siege. But I will not want news of redemption if it comes from the mouth of lepers. This is symbol. This is a metaphor for something impure. Let one who is pure bring news, and let the pure redeem. And if the pure proves unable, then let me die among the ravage of the siege on the eve of the great day of tidings. So Rachel, before 1931, which is when she dies, is writing one of the earliest poems in modern Israeli or Hebrew poetry lore about the issue of war ethics and what is okay to do while fighting for the freedom of the country or its safety and what is not okay. She is criticizing an unknown event. We do not know exactly which one, but she is unhappy with the behavior of the underground and she will not be redeemed like that. 31, Rachel dies. In 1946, the Irgun blows up King David, and how does Israeli left of center press react to that? By publishing the Rachel poem to express their criticism of the behavior of the same organization. What is interesting to see that later, as wars continue to happen in this country, Chaim Guri, the poet who is clearly not right-wing and belongs to the camp of Rachel, will react to an event of improper behavior in an article he published in 1977. Rachel has been dead for over 40 years, and he says the following: "And what about us, who are also tainted by the lepers, in parentheses, good tidings, barely a pace between the exalted and the despicable, the leper and the pure. I saw with my own eyes the deeds as they unfolded. I saw brothers emerging raw after raw to break through and fall in battle to run away, but also the thieves and the looters, plunderers, the one who took under the curse of the abandoned property. I saw those who spilled the blood of innocent people during a just war. I saw the mitzvot that were performed through sinning, as if I was condemned to be both the perpetrator and the witness in this terrible discomfort, the mixture of opposite. You had to navigate among choices to carry on top of your military equipment a load of prohibitions. You had to choose the hard way." So Chaim Guri in 77, this is after the Yom Kippur War, addressing himself to improper conduct during wartime, is doing it with a dialogue with an early Rachel poem. And in a poem that he will publish in one of his later collections, this is just the Hebrew original, and here is a poem from Chaim Guri Elul notebooks, and he says, "The city of Shomron is tightly closed." He goes back to the biblical event quoted by Rachel. "A hunger greater than words. Rachel, it is best you include me, a fifth. There were 4 lepers. He now wants to be included as a fifth. To those who brought the tidings, less fucked up, but no cleaner than them by a farting." Rachel, he says, "So many years later, I have sinned myself. I have seen ill conduct during war. I have been part of it. You called it out so early, and still in 1985, I found myself guilty of that." So I think it's important for us to know that a poet who is associated with the beauty of the Kinneret and Mount Hermon and the love of children and the misery of tuberculosis is also connected to one of the earliest poems honestly calling out misconduct during war by Israeli Jewish soldiers. You remember that a while ago I mentioned to you that the first poem we have started with, "To My Land, El Artzi," was this epitome of pioneering, beautiful love of the country. And I told you that within a year, Rachel will write another one, "Oh My Land," that I oftentimes relate to as "Oivei My Land," which will be the exact opposite. So quickly, a few lines of the Hebrew and the English to conclude with. "הו ארצי הורתי מדוע כה שדוף נופך ועצב, זיכרונה של ארץ חורגת בלי משים עולה על הלב. Oh, my land, my parent, why is so landscape so blighted and gloomy?" She's imagining herself on the Kinneret and says, "I love it, but it's terrible." The memory of a stepmother land imperceptibly creeps into the heart. She is actually missing her homeland, Russia, the Ukraine. Upon the hillside the sprightly fir tree, upon the plain the ancient oak, on the slopes, on the shores of the stream, the birch maidens in their Shabbat garb. She misses all the trees, she misses the forest, she misses through the metaphors other family members that she had left behind. And once she's talking about the trees and she remembers the forest in that barren land of the land of Israel. Let me tell you about forest. The arm of the sun is too short to cast its fiery lance into the heart of the forest. This is how thick the trees are. A whole day in the abode of the pines, scented darkness and a dream. She is actually homesick for Russia. And then she reaches the last verse and pulls back her horses. She's sorry for having expressed that. Oh, my mother, surely we yearn for you. Surely we will claim your abuse from God. And as in former times, you will again spread fragrance and shade over those stricken by your noontime heat. I teach this poem very often, and there are two things I like to say about it. One is that Rachel, a female, not that well known as popular as the guy poets at the time, dares and has the courage to say, yeah, we are committed to the Zionist cause, but my goodness, it's so hard. And we miss home. Yeah, pogrom Russia, we miss home very much. And the second thing I like to point out about this poem is the fact that although it's a very Israeli poem, by virtue of its description of the feelings of immigrants, it can be treated as a universal poem. Because no matter how hard old country had been, and no matter how much you wanted to go to the new country, be it Israel or America, you still miss home no matter how bad it was. And when she says when the country will finally flourish and we will have all those trees, she's saying actually if all works well for us, it will look a little bit like Russia. And think about all the immigrants you know that as soon as they make good, they start establishing little Italy and little Tokyo and a little bit of home in the new country. I think by opening our eyes to see the poetry of Rachel as so multifaceted is a good moment for me, I think, to conclude my talk, open it for a last round of comments and questions if there is any, and if not, let you, Matt, to conclude our series. Anybody? We see Ed. Yeah, bevakasha.
I think that what strikes me is how sentimental, lyrical, and sophisticated the poetry gets when she gets to Tel Aviv. And I don't know what sort of universe she was working in there, but it just goes up a huge notch. But she's also very, very lonely, meaning that it's communicating her feelings.
Absolutely.
It's extraordinary how much it turns and how quickly it turns.
Yeah. You're absolutely right in that. And she was in a very, cultured environment, but she was very lonely. They did take care of her until her last day, but she was basically very lonely. Let's go to Hannah and after that to Sherry. Yeah.
I just want to thank you. This last poem was like the perfect last poem, and it is perfect for this week in this world. You know, the universality of it and the longing of immigrants is what we're dealing with in this country, in the US, just in a very visceral way. The poem, I just have to say, barren, um, just is really written for every woman.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have my children until I was past 40. I lucked out,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know. And so I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Miri, why don't you go next to be followed by Sherry?
I was amazed to learn that she was critical about not only the things that the Irgun did, but basically, the same thing that's going on now about how Israel is being treated by the world for things that upset me too, but I don't know what else we were supposed to do. And I'm wondering if she is considered, she's on the 20 shekel note. So Israel has forgiven her, I guess, for her criticism of the
Excuse me,
Israeli.
why do people who bring out to light ill doings need to be forgiven? Since
I'm
when
sorry.
is it something that needs to be forgiven when you tell the truth about ill doings?
Well, because the people who are printing the money often don't like to be criticized. You know what I mean? It's like
I don't know.
so the people who honor her are the people she's criticizing.
She wrote the poem in before 1931. She got on the banknote 10 years ago. There's like
Okay.
80 years discrepancy between the two, and much harsher criticism has been printed in Israel since.
Okay. But in her lifetime, did she face blowback or opposition
You
or
can see Chaim Guri told her, we have done the same. And he too admits to ill doings.
right? But I'm just wondering whether in her personal life was she castigated or did some
Not because of
no.
this. No,
Okay.
no. Sherry, you go next. Please unmute.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. In the poem, "On My Lands," can you comment on why in the first line, "On my lands, my parents," and then in the third land, she says, "The memory of a stepmother land." I mean, why use the word parents and then stepmother land?
Try to think as an idealist pioneer. I came to Israel. Israel is my land. Israel is my parent. I have turned my back on Russia, but the memory is creeping in. What can I tell you? I wanted Russia to be stepmother, but the memory is creeping in. She is actually torn between her ideological decision to make Israel her motherland, while in the back of her mind she misses Russia. And thank you for the question. Very important. And Michael, your hand is still up.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, I missed last week. So I just am curious, do you know the title of the Chernyakhovsky poem that I had to commit to memory in college, actually? It goes like this, Ani mishali ein klum gam lo
Ani
shelcha.
li Micheli and li Klum. Yeah, I don't remember the title from the top of my hand. If you
Okay.
email me, I will look it up for you.
Oh, God bless you. And thank you so much for bringing the heart and soul to our attention at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Matt, back to you.
Yes, as a conclusion for these sessions, thank you all for joining us. It's really been wonderful to learn with Rochelle and share these poems. I know it's been a difficult time, and at the same time, I wish you all a happy Hanukkah, the rest of the Hanukkah holiday, and maybe bring more light into the world. So
Hallelujah.
yeah, so thank you all again, and I look forward to having Rochelle with us in the future. Take care.
Okay, thank you. I'll
Bye.
write to you, Matt, about the new Alterman project. It may be of interest to the Hyberman Foundation as well. Okay,
Wonderful. Thank
Tudaraba.
you.
Until we meet again, have a wonderful Hanukkah.